How's it, guys? Welcome to Cult Action Reviews, where we look at the weird, the wonderful, and the downright terrible of the action film universe. Today, to celebrate Halloween, we've got a film that combines zombies, vampires, martial arts, and comedy, and mixes it all together in a blender of ridiculousness that you have to see to believe. I'm talking about Billy Chong's Kung Fu Zombie. When Sammo Hung released Close Encounters of the Spooky Kind in the 1980s, it was a massive success and spawned many copycats. Kung Fu Zombie is one of those copycats. Starring Billy Chong, an Indonesian martial artist and actor who became famous in the 70s and 80s for his B-movies like this one. It is directed by someone you won't know, starring a bunch of people you won't know, and is a lot of fun despite its somewhat questionable moments. Unlike some of the other films I've looked at recently, namely the terrible Predator knockoff from last time, this one is actually worth watching and kept me entertained throughout its entire runtime. There's enough action, silly comedy, stupid slapstick, well choreographed fight scenes to make it interesting. As the film starts, you get the first major downfall of the movie, or of the version I watched. You see, this film was cut up when it was distributed in America. They cut 20 minutes out of it and rearranged some scenes when they were doing the dubbing. The result is a movie that's not as good as it could be. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the longer cut, which is 20 minutes longer than the one I watched, and is obviously the better film. If you can find that version, which is the original Cantonese version, and was released in Japan on DVD, that's the one you should watch. Although another reason I'm covering the English version is because it's a lot funnier and has some really terrible moments, mostly because of the awful dubbing. Right off the bat, we get an example of that terrible dubbing.
Voodoo, exorcism, vampirism.
You see, it's quite common for American movie producers to think audiences are stupid. So they looked at this scene and they said, American audiences won't be able to figure out what's going on from the context cues visible in front of their face. So they had some guy dub over in English what this guy is doing. It's like we're watching an Attenborough documentary. Of course, anyone with eyes can tell what he's doing without the stupid dub. Hint, he's performing black magic, resurrecting the dead. This is a Taoist priest bringing 4 zombies back to life to enact the villain's dastardly and really stupid plan to get revenge on the hero of this movie. The plan is obviously starting as it means to go on, badly, as the zombies all come to life and immediately jump on the guy who hired the priest to summon them. As you can see, this plan isn't going too well, and it's just going to get worse from here. The villains in this film aren't particularly bright. Another thing that you'll notice is that these rather gnarly looking zombies are of the Chinese variety. They're hopping zombies, which makes them much more entertaining to watch if you ask me. Oh, definitely, antagonizing the man who can summon the dead is always a good idea. Now we get an insight into the villain's plan. It's brilliant. He's going to hammer some knives into this coffin, put it in a hole, cover it with sticks and leaves, and then use the zombies to push the hero into the coffin so that he'll die. As you can see, this plan has several flaws. The first of which is that anyone can fall into the coffin, as they demonstrate here when the priest almost gets knocked in, and then the main bad guy almost gets knocked in by accident as well. Unusually for the movies I watch, we also have a bit of character development. It's established here that the priest is a bit of a coward, but he's a gold-hungry coward. And it's also established that the lead villain, this guy, is a complete idiot. And he's also quick to anger. He likes to bully his subordinates quite a lot. And there you have the characters as they will stay for the rest of the movie. We're then very jarringly introduced to our main character. This guy, Billy Chong, doing his best Bruce Lee impression. He's already got his shirt off, something that's going to happen a lot in this movie. This guy can't work with his shirt on. He keeps having to take it off in almost every scene. So I'm sure Billy liked his body quite a lot. He's introduced in this film, putting the Flash to shame by running at the speed of light taking out a couple of guys and running some more and fighting some more. After which he goes to have a nap in the tree, all before his master, who is also his father, comes around to poke him in the face with a stick and berate him for not training hard enough, even though he just made mincemeat of the 4 guys his father hired to fight him. They then argue for a bit. The crux of Billy's character is that he's a lazy sod. He wants to rest all the time, while his father wants to train him for an as yet unknown purpose. We then smash cut into a night scene. And I'm not going to get on this film too much for the continuity, because I know a lot of this could be because of the version I'm watching. As I said, American distributors decided that they should recut the film. So they rearranged scenes to make it more appealing to American audiences, I guess. I don't know if it works very well. It messes with the continuity a lot and leaves out very important scenes. Because the way it's cut, you'll not understand why or how certain things are happening. Character motivations are usually shown after the fact, which just confuses the audience even more. Sure as hell confused me. We're now shown our first taste of the fight scenes in this film, and honestly, they're not that bad. They have that kind of staccato rhythm that a lot of these older films had, where someone makes a move and then someone else makes a move, so it looks a bit overly rehearsed, but it's still rather good, which is, again, a novelty if the films I watch are anything to go by. We also see that Billy's dad has a habit of just beating the absolute shite out of him. He's obviously a great father. And then as the fight is going on, his father starts having a heart attack, which Billy takes as an invitation to leave him there, grab some money, and go out to get drunk with his friend. The family dynamic here is not great. Although, if my father had beat the snot out of me every 5 minutes like Billy's father does, I imagine I would have done the same thing. Going out, it seems, was not the best move, as Billy is immediately waylaid by the bad guy's henchman and taken to the cemetery, where he runs into the bad guy, and we get a quick flashback set to ridiculous silent comedy music and sped up, which I'm assuming is an American distributor thing. Apparently Billy foiled the bad guy's bank robbery, kicked the shit out of him and sent him to prison, where the bad guy learned Kung Fu. And we get this excellent put down.
I learned Kung Fu. How clumsy. I guess you studied in the prison laundry.
Man, I don't know how he's still standing after that. And here's where we see why the bad guy's plan is so friggin' stupid. Getting Billy to stand on the trap is almost impossible. And, for some reason, the bad guy decides to fight Billy, instead of using the zombies that he just used the towers to summon. And it's established the zombies have superhuman strength. So, they could just dogpile Billy and push him into the knifed coffin. But instead, they have a fight scene, where the bad guy is quite obviously outmatched. The fight scene's decent, although not very imaginative. It's intercut with scenes of the priest trying to figure out the perfect time to summon the zombies. And the inevitable happens. Yep, that's it. Our bad guy was hoisted by his own petard.
The one petard I thought would never hoist me!
Honestly, the amount of times the bad guy's almost fallen into this grave without assistance is staggering. So, the zombies are kind of doing us a favor here. Oh great, with the zombies involved, the fight scenes get even stiffer.
Master, it's a corpse!
How he didn't know it was a corpse is beyond me, and why he sniffs his hands afterwards. Man, that's the biggest mystery of this entire thing.
The priest must have been a wizard. Couldn't see his face in the dark.
Ah yeah, I'm sure you couldn't see his face in this very well-lit darkness. As the good guys do the smart thing in Scarpa, the unnecessary narration returns to remind us that this is a place of magic, because we obviously didn't think magic was involved in the zombies being brought back from the dead, did we? And this is where we get our first surprise of the movie. As the priest returns to steal the gold rings off the dead bad guy's finger, he also somehow manages to rip the man's soul out of his dead body. The bad guy is, somewhat understandably, pissed that he's dead, and pissed that the priest screwed up so badly. So he starts beating him up in this very slapstick scene. He also tells the priest that he wants to be reincarnated. At first he insists that he be reincarnated into his own body, but when the priest shows him that his face has become hamburger meat, he reconsiders. Now the priest needs to find this dude a body that he can stick his soul in. We then get a jump scare. It appears the father survived his heart attack, and we finally get to learn why he's been beating up his son on a daily basis. Apparently it's...
What's there to understand?
Revenge! A clan named Long, sworn to destroy us.
Yep, that's right. Revenge. The father's training his son to take on old enemies that apparently have a feud with them. Billy quickly shows us that he's a bit of a mercenary, immediately asking his father for his due, or he won't fight the bad guys.
What might do?
Interesting. We then get another fight scene. And, again, this one's quite cool. But at the end of it, the father, who has once again overexerted himself, has a heart attack and dies. Billy doesn't notice, however. He's too busy saying, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." And off he goes over the wall to have a drink in the local taverns, I suspect. And now here comes the priest, and he finds Billy's father's body. And we get this rather creepy scene where he measures it up with his hands and says some pretty creepy things about the dead man's physique.
16 pounds long. Wow, what a beautiful physique.
I mean, to be fair, he is body shopping for another soul. So I suppose he would look at the body like it's a second-hand car and check its mileage.
Smart man, you got good taste. I'll tell you something a lot of people don't have these days. Nice to see somebody finally walk on this lot who knows a good car when he sees one, I'll tell you.
After concluding that Billy's father had a beautiful physique, the priest immediately looks for the ghost so he can put it in the body. But the ghost of the bad guy has other plans. Yep, he's going to try and take on Billy in his ghost form. Let's just say it doesn't go well for him.
What the hell you doing? You trying to move it with your finger.
You can't push it with your finger. You're dead.
After unsuccessfully trying to beat up Billy, he ends up falling in the lake. And then the priest finds him again and tells him about this awesome new body he's just found. But unfortunately, it has way too much mileage for the bad guy's liking. Billy returns to find his father dead, and once again takes it in stride.
What do we do now?
Bury him. That's all. He seems dead.
In fact, his friend takes it harder than he does.
Master.
He was old.
But you know what, Billy's a young man, so now he can do what he wants. Unfortunately for him though, his father pops up from the dead, and they have another slapstick-filled fight, where the poor assistant gets brutalized. Billy manages to stop it by telling his father that he still needs it.
Before my enemies.
No matter what you think, we'll have a better chance of surviving if we cooperate.
Having lost the body that he found, the priest decides that the best thing to do is drink. And the amount of time this guy spends in the tavern in this film, it's obvious that this priest is not only an inept son of a bee, but he's also an alcoholic. And now we get some more slapstick humor. Unfortunately, this film seems to think that sexual assault is funny. I also don't understand how the woman getting touched up by the ghost here can possibly think that the priest is the one doing it. Does she think he's Dulcim and his arms are extending? After that frankly really unpleasant, unfunny scene in the tavern, we hop back to Billy getting beaten up by his father again. Only this one's for the ladies. Not only is Billy getting his shirt off, but he's also getting really, really wet. I don't know what the purpose of the water here is, maybe to cool him down, but as he's getting beaten up during the fight, his friend keeps popping up behind him to pour water on him. After a particularly savage beating, where his father whacks him with the stick multiple times until the stick actually breaks, the father concludes that because the stick broke, it's an omen. Now, Billy is ready to take on their greatest rivals.
That trained me, my father and grandfather. This stick breaking can only mean we've come to the end of our family line.
Less faith in your son than a stick?
No respect for traditions. Hamster?
This is why Billy doesn't seem particularly bothered whenever his father has his heart attacks. Less faith in his son than a stick, indeed. Who are their greatest rivals, you ask? I don't know. We've not been introduced to them. We've got their name, but I immediately forgot it. So I have no idea who the secondary villains in this film are. While our hero's getting the shit kicked out of him by his own father, we cut to the bad guys, who are, predictably, body shopping. I suppose there's no better place to find a body than a morgue. After some false starts, they manage to find one that the bad guy likes, and the ritual begins. But, of course, before the ritual begins, the priest actually has to look through his book. And the bad guy rightly points out,
Hey there, you know what you're doing?
my man, this priest hasn't done anything right up to this point. What makes you think he's going to do this right?
Some of the pages are missing.
What's that?
If I was him, I would go and find another priest. I actually kind of feel sorry for him. Imagine hiring a Taoist priest to bring back the dead to take revenge on your enemies, only for said priest to end up killing you, horribly mutilating your body, and then dragging your very soul out of that body. Another thing that this movie has going for it is that when they show the actual ritual to either bring back the dead or put the spirit in another body, it actually looks pretty cool. They've got some gnarly stuff going on, like the priest dipping his hands in blood and writing magical characters on his tongue. Although I'm pretty sure a lot of this was ripped wholesale from Close Encounters of the Spooky kind. The actual reincarnation process involves the bad guy's spirit running at full tilt into the dead body, and the priest literally nailing the soul into the body with the nails that he has.
That's what she said!
Which is pretty metal if you think about it. But, predictably, it doesn't go very well. Only this time, it doesn't go well for a very legitimate reason. That reason being, the guy's not actually dead.
You're alive.
Can't you tell the living from the dead?
You look dead to me.
I'm as much dead as I am alive.
Apparently somewhere between the living and the dead. I have no idea what this means and the film doesn't explain. The priest later says that this guy's such a vicious killer that he has no soul, so that's why it looked like he was dead. This is actually our secondary antagonist. And his name?
I am Long.
That's what she said!
The time has come, the culmination of all Billy's training throughout the film so far. He gets to face off against Long. And this fight scene's, again, actually pretty cool and well choreographed, and has some pretty funny moments. Although some of the editing is really dodgy. For some reason, in the middle of one of Billy's insane jumps, he turns into a different person for a brief second. What's that about? See what I mean about Billy having to get his shirt off in every fight scene? While Billy is fighting Long, the priest and the ghost are watching. I quite like the effect here of the ghost just wearing a hat. Although they can't seem to decide how tall the bad guy actually is. So the hat constantly changes heights. Sometimes it's taller than the priest, sometimes shorter.
Oh, your cold's getting worse.
Honestly, if I was a ghost and I got the cold, I would be so pissed off. Imagine being a ghost and getting sick. You'd think that would be the one thing that you wouldn't have to worry about anymore. But no, apparently ghosts can get the sniffles if they get wet.
How can you last this long?
Don't you know? We're horse trainers.
Ah yes, apparently if you want someone who can last a long time, you have to go for a horse trainer. As evidenced by the way every horse trainer in the world is beating it off with a stick. I have no idea why this seems like such a revelation, but the film seems to think it is, so I'll leave it at that. And with the power of shirtlessness, water, screaming and jumping, Billy wins the fight against Long. After taking out Long in the fight, they get a reward, which of course Billy's father keeps. And he's so happy about it, he has another heart attack and drops dead, for the third time in the movie. And once again, Billy is as concerned with the death of his father as he is with everything else. He doesn't give a shit. He even just takes the reward money and heads out, leaving his father dead on the floor. And of course the death of Long is a boon for the main bad guy, because now he thinks he's got a nice fit body that he can steal. And so we move into another ritual. Only this one goes pretty badly. Oh no, he summoned 70s disco.
Maybe I'm getting it in the wrong key.
Apparently all he needed to get the harmony right was a swift kick in the nuts.
Now you have released the dark forces of evil. The living dead that are within my body. No one can kill me now. Ah!
The priest's ineptitude becomes evident once again as they resurrect Long, this time as a vampire. Boing, 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 boing. With Long inconveniently turning into a vampire, the bad guy finds himself without a body once more. Luckily for him, it seems like Billy's father really is dead this time. They've even buried him and burned some offerings for him. So the bad guy decides the best course of action is to dig up Billy's father and go into his body. Predictably, it goes badly, because this is a comedy of errors. Except this time it's thanks to these two, the two idiots from the beginning, who are apparently servants of the main bad guy. This time they're going to screw up the ritual, meaning that their master's soul won't be properly nailed in to the corpse. You know, they could have at least tried to make the coffin look like it had been buried, instead of just dumping it in the dirt and piling some soil up around it. You're not fooling anyone here, guys. See what I mean about the height of the hat? This brings up a good point, actually. Everyone in this film is so nonchalant to what's happening around them, even though there are vampires, zombies, and other supernatural things happening everywhere. Well, I suppose that's why they're so nonchalant about it. If it's an everyday occurrence, I suppose it won't be that surprising. Since the priest and his minions screwed up his reincarnation, I mean, what did you expect at this point? He decides that he wants revenge, and the film suddenly turns into a Benny Hill sketch. After they escape, the priest explains to them that there are 3 ways that they can escape their master's wrath. The first is to go to a temple. The second is to go to prison. It's explained that prison works because the law is the hand of God. And the third is to wear a silly hat. The 3 men each pick a different way to get away from their vengeful master. The priest picks the silly hat, which makes him invisible to the reincarnated bad guy.
You may look foolish, but you're still alive.
This guy chooses to go into a temple and become a monk, which he's going to have trouble with because he likes eating meat too much. And this guy chooses sexual assault. Because yeah, that's the best way to get into a prison. Assault your friend's daughter. This film seems to think sexual assault is hilarious. If you do, well, you might enjoy these scenes. I don't very much. When I saw this, I couldn't help but think of the old Kung Fu film trick. Do you know how they get these scenes where a guy's kicked in the face? They do it this way. By putting a hand in a shoe and using it like this. And then they smack the guy in the face so it looks like he's being kicked. I learned this from Scott Adkins. After assaulting the girl, as he skips his way to jail, the bad guy intercepts him, so he hustles into the nearest temple. And then we see what happens whenever the bad guy enters a temple. The paintings become Cyclops from the X-Men, shoot him with their laser eyes, and send him tumbling out the door. As all this is happening with the bad guy and his former minions, Billy is just getting into random fights that don't mean very much. They're okay to look at, but I have no idea what narrative purpose they serve. This is probably a problem to do with the American distributor again, cutting the film by 20 minutes. So, at about an hour in, this film gets slightly incomprehensible. The plot line of revenge is lost slightly, and we have a bunch of scenes of fighting and meaningless slapstick. It's okay if you just want to turn off your brain and look at images happening in front of your eyes, but other than that, it's not very entertaining. As the vampire runs through the streets, feeding on victims, Billy discovers that his dad's body is missing. And then, as he heads home, he finds out that his dad is apparently still alive. Once again, he takes this in his stride, like everyone else in this movie whenever confronted with something that's out of this world. He's mildly suspicious as his father is very nice to him, however, which saves his life as his father tries to stab him with a giant machete. All he ends up doing is ruining this rather lovely looking watermelon. As Billy decides, once again, to head out on the town. Luckily for Billy, heading out on the town saves his life, as the bad guy comes in and tries to kill him in his bed, but he's already scarpered out the window. Suspicious that his father has suddenly come back to life and is now trying to kill him, Billy decides to seek out the priest. Why he does this, I'm not sure, but it's actually a good idea, because he's the only one that knows what's going on. That's how Billy finds out that his father's body is inhabited by another soul, which they then try to remove in another ridiculous slapstick scene. The priest, by the way, is drunk off his tits in this scene. That's why he's even more useless than normal. This dude hasn't done a thing right since this movie started. I guess he did bring the zombies back, if that counts at all. Funnily enough, as the bad guy is fighting Billy and his father's body, he, predictably, has another heart attack. This is why, when you're buying second hand, you should always make sure that the goods are in really good condition. Now the movie decides to speed towards a climax. Billy decides to work with the priest to put his father's soul and body to rest, and the bad guy decides to work with the vampire to finally kill Billy and his subordinates once and for all. This all takes us into the maddest fight scene of the movie, which is a good 10 minutes long and is actually ridiculously entertaining from start to finish. I mean it, you should totally watch this movie if only for this final fight scene. It's full of ridiculous slapstick, some awesome martial arts, a lot of jumping and screaming. At one point, Billy realizes he can't fight the vampire. He's losing, so he decides to run away after kicking out one of its teeth. He runs straight into this priest, who decides, "You're not gonna go away, son. You have to fight this dude." So he puts some beads on him, slaps some talismans onto his body, turns him around and kicks him after the vampire. After which, Billy has the strength to take the dude on, because he's blessed by magic. A highlight is when the vampire's hands and feet, which are all now wooden for some reason, catch fire, and he keeps fighting. Billy then has to use his secret weapon, a jug of water. It seems this guy uses water as his superpower. And then, after a lot of screaming and jumping around, the main bad guy's soul is kicked out of Billy's father's body, and the vampire is staked, rather brutally actually. I mean, check this out. And after that, the film ends with the priest being chased by all the zombies that he created during the film. And that's it, Kung Fu Zombies, starring Billy Chong. This is the kind of thing you'd find in the Blockbuster and rent because it had a cool cover, and then you'd watch it as a kid and think it was the most awesome thing ever. And you know what? It's hard to disagree. It is a rip-off of Close Encounters of the Spooky Kind, which is a far, far better movie, with more talented people both in front and behind the camera. But Kung Fu Zombie is good enough in its own right. It moves fast, it has some good action scenes, some good gore scenes, and even some rather charming special effects. I mean, the bad guy's body getting struck by lightning was pretty cool. I say you should definitely check this one out for Halloween. It's the perfect time to watch this film. It's rather spooky and you have some good moments in it. And if you're down for a bit of lowbrow, silly slapstick humor, you'll get that here. I enjoyed this one, and after last week's Predator ripoff, which was so bad I actually wanted to cry, this film was a pleasant surprise. I'm going to be seeking out more Billy Chong films in future. And that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Cult Action Reviews, and I hope you have a really spooky Halloween.